Did you know that Donald Trump's story can teach you much more than just politics and business? What if I told you that, while uncovering the life of one of the most influential and controversial and figures of recent history, you could also improve your English in a practical and engaging way? Welcome to English Made Familiar, the channel created for those who want to level up their English naturally, effectively, and with content that truly captivates. Here, you'll learn through real stories, authentic vocabulary, and immersive contexts. No rigid grammar lessons. Our goal is to help you think and understand like a native speaker. In this video, you're going to dive deep into Donald Trump's complete journey, from his childhood in Queens to the power corridors of Washington, a path filled with highs, lows, dramatic twists, and hidden lessons. If you're serious about learning English through content that matters, stay until the end. This could change the way you learn for good. From a very young age, Donald Trump was surrounded by the backstage of big decisions. Born on June 14, 1946, in the Queens borough of New York City, he grew up in an environment of ambition and discipline. His father, Fred Trump, was a real estate magnate, and his mother, Mary McLeod, a Scottish immigrant who brought strict values with her. Donald was raised in a home where negotiation came before multiplication tables. And when your family teaches you to compete early, success doesn't feel like a goal. It feels like an expectation. The siblings, 4 in total, formed a close-knit family, but one marked by silent rivalry. Fred, the father, wasn't raising his children for comfort. He was raising them for excellence. His firm presence set the bar high. Failure wasn't even mentioned at the dinner table. Donald watched, learned, and mirrored. Even as a boy, he understood the power of image, posture, and legacy. It's no coincidence that decades later, he would turn his last name into a brand, one as iconic as the Trump Tower itself. That kind of family dynamic, mixing pressure with ambition, laid the foundation for an empire he hadn't yet dreamed of building. Every lesson, from how his father closed deals to the way his mother told stories about Scotland, shaped his sense of leadership. It wasn't a typical childhood. It was an initiation. And for those paying attention, the boy from Queens already carried the seeds of the man who would one day dominate Atlantic City's casinos, flood the media, and walk the halls of the Capitol. Donald Trump's education wasn't just a passage through schools, it was a testing ground for his developing personality. He first attended the Kew Forest School, where his impatience with authority and taste for confrontation already stood out. That temperament led his parents to make a drastic decision: send him to the New York Military Academy. There, among uniforms and rigid discipline, he began to grasp the value of hierarchy, strategy, and self-control. A military school doesn't just shape the body, it trains the spirit. This new environment, defined by strict routines and constant competition, had a profound impact. He was no longer just Fred Trump's son. He now had to earn his place through merit. Even though the family name still carried weight, he was tested daily, and those small battles prepared him for the ones to come. Whether at the casino negotiation tables or on the fiery campaign trail, the military academy served as a mirror. It was there he began to understand that leadership is more about presence than words, and presence he had in abundance. Later, he chose to follow the academic path with a clear focus: business. After a stint at Fordham University, he transferred to the prestigious Wharton School, graduating in economics in 1968. He wasn't a brilliant student in the traditional sense, but he knew exactly where to focus his energy. Wharton gave him technical tools, but the real world would become his true laboratory. And it's interesting to think that while others were memorizing theories, he was already sketching strategies, something he would later apply at the Trump Organization and on national television with The Apprentice. Joining the Trump Organization, his father's company, might have looked like an easy path. But Donald Trump didn't want to simply follow in Fred's footsteps. He wanted to expand, transform, and leave his own mark. From the start, he made it clear he thought on a larger scale. His ambition reached beyond the quiet neighborhoods of Brooklyn and Queens where his father operated. He had his eyes set on Manhattan, like an artist staring at a blank canvas, and his first bold stroke would be the Grand Hyatt project. It was during the ambitious renovation of the old Commodore Hotel that Trump proved his skill in handling complex deals. Still a young businessman, he managed to negotiate agreements between public and private sectors, convincing both government officials and investors. That's not just talent. It's strategic vision paired with boldness. And maybe the most interesting part wasn't even the building itself, but the noise it created in the media. Trump already understood that visibility was part of the game, and he was playing it well. That successful project became a key that unlocked new opportunities. By proving he could negotiate and deliver, he earned trust from banks, the market, and perhaps most importantly, from himself. The Trump name started gaining traction, increasingly tied to ambitious developments and urban transformation. With every new venture, he wasn't just building real estate, he was building a presence. And as we'll see, that boldness was only the beginning of an empire that would eventually blend concrete, controversy, and political power. The 1980s marked a turning point for Donald Trump. It was as if every street corner in New York represented an opportunity, and he knew exactly where to step. The creation of the iconic Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue wasn't just an architectural feat. It was a statement. Italian marble, gold-accented escalators, and a design that blended luxury with dominance. The tower housed more than offices and high-end stores. It housed ego, vision, and a name that would soon echo beyond city skylines. Not content with vertical success in Manhattan, Trump turned his attention to Atlantic City, where casinos became his next big bet. He bought and renovated properties like the Taj Mahal and Trump Plaza, expanding into the entertainment industry. It was risky territory, but he thrived where others hesitated. These casinos weren't just sources of revenue, they were showcases for his boldness. Trump was mastering a new game board, one where chips, headlines, and public image were all part of the same high-stakes hand. During this phase, the name Trump became synonymous with success. Magazines didn't just report on his business deals, they covered his lifestyle, his cars, and his bold remarks. He understood the attention economy long before it had a name. While traditional businessmen stayed in the background, Trump chased the spotlight, and he found it. The media couldn't resist his polarizing presence, and the public, fascinated, began to see him as more than just a businessman. Little did they know, that same name would one day show up on ballots across the country. Behind the scenes of the business world and media frenzy, Donald Trump's personal life was filled with big moments. His first marriage to Ivana Trump, a former Czech ski champion, wasn't just a romantic union, it was a powerful alliance. Together, they became the power couple of the 1980s, raising 3 children who would later become familiar faces in high society and eventually play strategic roles in the Trump Organization. It was as if the family had already been groomed for a legacy far beyond appearances. After his separation from Ivana came new chapters and new relationships. Marla Maples became his second wife, with whom he had a daughter, Tiffany. This marriage, shorter and more turbulent, was heavily covered by the media, revealing how Trump's private life had become part of his public spectacle. But his third marriage to Melania, a Slovenian model with a quiet, composed presence, marked a new phase. Together, they had his 5th child, Baron. Each marriage mirrored a moment in his journey, like milestones punctuating the chapters of a power-driven biography. Altogether, Trump has 5 children, each with distinct roles in his personal and professional spheres, and grandchildren who have slowly begun to appear in select events and family photos. For Trump, family isn't just emotional support. It's a strategic asset. Much like the Trump Tower or his Atlantic City casinos, his lineage carries the responsibility of upholding the brand. This personal nucleus, straddling affection and ambition, remains a central pillar in his empire, both in business and politics. If there was one thing Donald Trump mastered beyond business, it was the art of staying in the spotlight. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, his constant appearances in magazines, talk shows, and tabloids turned him into more than just a businessman. He became a celebrity. Trump understood that in a world where image is as valuable as capital, staying in the headlines was just as important as closing deals. And he did it naturally. Every public appearance, every controversial statement was an investment in his personal brand. In 2004, he made a bold move by launching the reality show, The Apprentice. The concept was simple yet powerful. Put aspiring entrepreneurs under pressure and test who had the mindset to lead. His catchphrase, "You're fired," became a national sensation, quoted, parodied, and repeated across the country. More than a television show, it made Trump a household name. Even for those who had never read a business article, he became instantly recognizable. It was as if the stage had been designed for his exact personality. This media phase was, in practice, a political campaign disguised as entertainment. Without formally running for anything, Trump was testing his influence, his connection with the public, and his ability to shape narratives. With each season of The Apprentice, more people were drawn to his persona. Admired by some, criticized by others, but never ignored. And when you realize this was never just about entertainment, it becomes clear. He was paving a path, built on headlines and ratings, that would eventually lead him to the ballot box. Few personal names have become as globally recognizable as Trump. It wasn't just a signature on contracts. It became a logo, a luxury label, a symbol. Donald Trump understood early on that a personal brand is an asset that goes far beyond products or properties. By stamping his name on hotels, golf courses, skyscrapers, and even bottled water, he turned every venture into an extension of himself. Trump didn't just sell services, he sold status. And for those who bought in, it was about joining the image of power and prestige he so carefully curated. Globalization helped, but strategy is what secured his international presence. From Las Vegas to Dubai, from resorts in the Philippines to towers in Istanbul, the Trump empire spread like a seal of exclusivity. Even in projects he didn't directly own, he licensed his name, turning his reputation into currency. It's a clever play, one many don't notice, using your name as capital. While other business figures stayed behind the scenes, Trump made sure his face and name were front and center, shining like the gold letters on the Trump Tower. This branding, sustained through constant media presence, bold statements, and calculated appearances, wasn't just marketing, it was ideological positioning. Trump sold an idea that success is accessible if you think big, speak boldly, and act with confidence. His name came to represent not just real estate, but a world view. And it's no surprise that the same image he built in the luxury market would later be rebranded into a political promise, one that declared loudly, "Make America Great Again." For all the power and prestige surrounding his image, Donald Trump was never immune to the brutal cycles of business. In the 1990s, he faced a severe financial crisis, a storm of debt, casino bankruptcies, and failed high-risk projects. The same Atlantic City ventures that once symbolized his boldness now weighed down his financial statements. Most people in his position would have vanished from the public eye. But Trump? He doubled down. He didn't hide from the fall. He turned it into part of the narrative. That period forced him to rethink strategies and renegotiate with banks aggressively. And here's a rare lesson. Even in chaos, Trump managed to protect his public image. While his empire shook behind closed doors, his personal brand remained untouched in the media. He knew how to separate the man from the business, and often turned failure into a sign of resilience. Watching him was like watching a poker player who, even when losing chips, never lost his gaze, posture, or confidence. What separates average leaders from icons is their ability to reinvent themselves, and Trump made a habit of doing just that. He survived the crisis, restructured his finances, and returned with even bigger ventures. The takeaway, intentional or not, was powerful. Failure can be a temporary disguise for success. Each financial stumble was, in its own way, training for future battles, whether in business or in the rough terrain of American politics. Because for someone who understands the symbolic power of his own name, falling is never the end. It's just the next act. Long before officially announcing his candidacy, Donald Trump was already testing the political waters with provocative statements and bold opinions. In the 2000s, it wasn't unusual to see him discussing topics like trade, immigration, and national security on talk shows and interviews. But like a strategist studying the board before making a move, he waited for the right moment. He spoke like an outsider, a businessman who looked at Washington with suspicion. What seemed like improvisation was, in reality, drawing the attention of an audience tired of the same old political talk. His sharp rhetoric, combined with decades of media presence, was already laying the foundation for something bigger. The image of the tough executive from The Apprentice began to merge with that of a fierce critic of the system. While political parties clung to outdated models, Trump spoke directly to the people. No filters, no polish. Some found him offensive. Others saw him as the only one speaking the truth. And that's how a new political force emerged. Not built on experience, but on presence, influence, and disruption. This transition from businessman to political figure didn't happen overnight. It was a quiet, almost theatrical build-up. The brand that once sold buildings now sold a promise of renewal. Trump understood that people don't just buy ideas, they buy security, identity, and strength. By challenging the political establishment and intellectual elites, he positioned himself as the voice of the common American. And so, through fiery speeches and strategic appearances, the opening scene of a campaign began to unfold, one that would forever change the American political stage. Donald Trump's 2016 presidential run, announced in 2015, was dismissed as a joke by many. But for those who had followed his journey, it was clear from the beginning he wasn't in it for show. The campaign quickly became a spectacle of its own. Fiery speeches, bold promises, and a communication style that defied political correctness. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," struck an emotional chord. Simple, nostalgic, and powerful. Trump wasn't just aiming to win an election. He wanted to rewrite the rules of politics itself. His promises were bold and direct. Building a wall on the southern border, cracking down on immigration, bringing back American jobs, and challenging global trade deals. While Hillary Clinton ran on experience and stability, Trump campaigned on disruption and confrontation. He didn't use teleprompters. He spoke as if he were at a diner, not a formal rally. And maybe that's exactly why so many people connected with him. He felt authentic, unpredictable, raw. The result shocked the world. Against all odds, Trump won the 2016 election and became the 45th president of the United States. The man who had conquered real estate, casinos, and reality TV now took control of the Oval Office. For some, it was the collapse of the political order. For others, the rise of a new era, where the outsider finally overpowered the establishment. One thing was clear. With his provocative campaign and outsider energy, Donald Trump didn't just enter politics. He forced it to evolve. Donald Trump's presidency was anything but predictable. From the very first months, he made it clear he wouldn't follow Washington's traditional playbook. With an agenda focused on economic growth, he implemented tax cuts that energized the market and boosted business confidence. For a time, the U.S. economy responded like it hadn't in years. Job creation surged, the stock market climbed, and consumer spending accelerated. Trump treated the government the way a CEO treats a corporation, focused on outcomes, not ceremony. On immigration, he stayed true to his word, or at least tried. The wall on the southern border became a near-mythic symbol of his administration. Alongside stricter policies, he won both fervent applause and intense criticism. Trump never sought consensus. He thrived on confrontation. This approach extended into foreign policy, where he broke protocol with bold meetings involving leaders from North Korea, China, and Russia. He often ignored conventional advice, but still managed to shift the global chessboard in unexpected ways. His attempt to overhaul the healthcare system, while not fully successful, reflected his desire to dismantle what he saw as the legacy of previous administrations. But it was the impeachment proceedings, rooted in accusations of abuse of power, that catapulted his name into yet another level of controversy. Though charged, he was acquitted by the Senate, emerging even more solidified in the eyes of his base, almost like a political martyr. And so his presidency continued, filled with turbulence and triumph, scandal and economic milestones, keeping both the nation and the world on edge. The 2020 election wasn't just a political race. It was a clash of narratives, a battle between two visions of America. On one side, Donald Trump defended his record with promises of continued economic growth and unshakable patriotism. On the other, Joe Biden offered a return to calm and political normalcy. The COVID-19 pandemic served as the dramatic backdrop, testing both candidates' leadership. Even in the midst of a global crisis, Trump campaigned like a fighter in the arena. He didn't retreat, didn't apologize, and that only fueled the fire among his most loyal supporters. When the results showed Biden as the winner, Trump responded in the most unexpected way. He cried fraud, without providing solid evidence. That claim found fertile ground among a segment of the electorate, creating national tension. The breaking point came on January 6, 2021, with the storming of the Capitol, a chaotic event that stained his exit from power and shook global confidence in American democracy. Trump, long known for challenging institutions, now found himself at the center of a moment that tested their very limits. Still, he didn't fade from the spotlight. Refusing to attend Biden's inauguration, a symbolic and rare move, Trump turned inward to focus on his loyal base. He remained active through speeches, rallies, and media appearances. Some thought it was the end, but Trump treated it like a strategic pause, not a finale. For someone who's lost before, only to rise again, this moment felt more like a reset than a retreat. His story, after all, was never linear. It was always cyclical, and cycles always find a new beginning. Even out of office, Donald Trump remains a gravitational force in American politics. His rallies still draw huge crowds, his statements spark headlines, and his influence over the Republican Party is undeniable. For millions of Americans, he wasn't just a president. He became a symbol of resistance against the system. His supporters see him as the one who dared to say what others wouldn't, who challenged the media, the establishment, and the institutions with the boldness of someone who never played by the rules. To many, he became an idea, not just a man. Speculation about a potential 2024 run grows louder each day, and if his base has anything to say about it, that race will be a battle. Despite legal issues, defeats, and public scrutiny, Trump operates like a political survivor, someone who knows how to read a room, test a message, and wait for the perfect opening. He doesn't need a title to hold power. His name alone can still sway conversations, shape agendas, and ignite movements. For those who have followed him since the early Trump Tower days or through the casino corridors of Atlantic City, none of this is surprising. Trump has always played to win, even when he loses. And as with any larger-than-life figure, His true legacy won't be what's written at the end. It'll be what keeps being retold. To his supporters, he embodies the belief that anything is possible with confidence, conviction, and the will to challenge the expected. And in the uncertain tides of modern politics, one thing is certain: Donald Trump isn't done yet. Now that you've explored the full journey of Donald Trump, from his family roots to the most turbulent chapters of his political career, let me ask you this: what will you do with that knowledge? Learning English goes far beyond memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It's about diving into real contexts, understanding cultures, and feeling the language in action. That's exactly what English Made Familiar is here to offer. A dynamic, immersive way to learn English through stories that matter and content that sticks with you long after the video ends. So if this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone else who's ready to learn in a smarter, more engaging way. Which part of the story surprised you the most? And what do you think the future holds for Trump in American politics? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you, because here we grow together. No fluff, no shortcuts, just real English through real stories.